Hi, welcome to Tag Arcade, and this is part 3, the last tutorial for my event system. So I always keep on forgetting to add this at the end of my video, so I'm going to talk about this at the very beginning of my videos. If you're having trouble seeing my scripts, or looking at scripts, or if you just want to copy and paste it into your own project, feel free to go to my website at www.tagarcade.com and you can get the coding for all of my tutorials. Yeah, I should probably bring you to my website, right? While I talk about this. So, once again, www.tagarcade.com. You can go to the tutorial sections, and yeah, when you click on view code, you could view the appropriate codes. Feel free to copy and paste it into your own scripts. There is a weird thing at the end where if you understand HTML, anytime you open a bracket, it has to be closed. And unfortunately, in my code, you have these brackets up top somewhere. So I'm trying to find where the bracket is. Um, yeah, so here's the bracket. So bracket controls close bracket. So unfortunately, in order for HTML code to work, that bracket has to be closed, and or else that throws like the formatting off. That's why I do have this disclaimer here that you have to delete all the lines below here. And so far, I have not found a way to get rid of that. Uh, so yeah. So moving on. Um, we're going to be talking about the car prototype. So the first thing we want to make sure is that everything works the way it is. So let's go ahead and test this again. Um, Come on, just waiting for it to play. And just to see what my key bindings are. So I'm just going to do the W, S, A, oops, A, D. No, this would be N. Submit, enter, escape for, okay. And let's go to car prototype. And already we have the index out of exception. So let's go ahead and open it and see what exactly is out of exception. Let's go ahead and pause it. And it looks like the controls is not correct. So let's go ahead and go back to our car prototype and look at the car controls. So once again on the car controls, we only have 5, but we know we need 7 because we have the cancel and submit. So luckily we did have a prefab. So let's go ahead and go back to the configuration, go to our car controls. You'll notice that it's highlighted in blue. This blue indicates that it is part of a prefab, and if I were to make any sort of changes onto here, you'll see that some items become, I guess, bolded. So what the bold means is that this setting here is not applied to the prefab. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that back to N. And once all these settings are correct, you should hit the apply button on the top right hand corner. So when you do hit apply and you scroll down, uh, the the variables are no longer bold. Okay, so now that we know all those settings are applied, let's go back to our car prototype. We'll go ahead and save that. And our car controls here is not bolded in blue, which means this is not referencing our prefab. So let's go ahead and delete this, drag in our car controls, and now our prefab is being referenced because it is now in blue. So let's go ahead and go back to our configuration again, hit save, play, and I'm going to go back to the car prototype. And wonderful. Once we go back to the car prototype, go back to our config, we're not getting any sort of error messages on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So let's go ahead and go back into our car prototype and start modifying our scripts. So if we go into our event system, we still have the standalone input module. And what I want to do actually is I want to rename this. Instead of calling this the Tag Arcade event system, I want to rename this to Tag Arcade input module because I think that's a better name for this rather than the event system because this isn't really the event system. This is pretty much because this is pretty much Unity receiving the inputs from either joystick, mouse, keyboards, etc. So we went ahead and changed the name. We'll copy it so I don't have to retype it. Let's reopen this. And looks like this opened up in my other screen. And let's just go ahead and paste it into our name right here. File save. And let's hit play. Make sure everything's good. Everything looks good. Go back to our event system, and we haven't actually applied the Tiracade input module. So let's go ahead and drag it into here. Let's disable the standalone input module. And we'll go ahead and start modifying our car move script. So within our car moves, we set it so that our update function defines how the car moves, either up, down, left, right, and also the NOS. So what I'm going to do is I am going to simply comment all of this out by doing a slash asterisk or slash star. And then at the end of the update function, I'm going to do star slash so that my whole update function is commented out. I'm going to hit play just to make sure that the car does not move when I press any of my buttons. So I'm pressing the WSAD, it's not moving. I'm pressing N for NOS, and it is not cycling on and off. That is excellent. Okay, so in order for us to use our event system, we must include the directive to use the Unity event system. So let's go ahead and say using Unity engine dot event system with the S at the end. Event systems. Okay. Once we do that, we have to tell our script that we want to use certain behaviors in our event system. So one of these things are going to be called IMove Handler. So IMove Handler is detecting whether or not you press the up, down, left, or right movements. And that's what I'm going to use right now. If you want to take into account the submit and cancel button, then you could do that by I submit handler, and then you got I cancel handler. So that if something gets, if you press the cancel button or submit button, you could go ahead and handle those appropriate inputs. So for now, I'm just going to use the iMove handler, and we'll go ahead and take into account how to move our car up, down, left, and right. So whenever you use the iMove handler, you have to use a specific function, and okay, and this function is called public void onMove. Oops. And this is going to be access event data, and we can call this any name we want. We can just call it event data. Okay. Once we have that, then we're just going to copy a little bit of our code right here. So we're going to start from if NOS to determine what our speed is, and process the up, down, left, and right. So we can say copy this, and we're going to paste it. Okay. So this is going to be slightly different. So we're still going to use transform data translate, but the key thing is whenever you press up or down, it's going to be a number between 1 and -1. So we don't really have to say car control dot get access up and car control dot get access down, because up and down can be controlled by just one script. So we're just going to delete this. And let me look at my notes to see what it is. So what this is going to be is this is going to be vector3 dot forward times current speed times our event data dot move vector dot y. So if my move vector y is a positive number, it's going to go ahead and move forward. And if it's negative, it'll go ahead and move backwards. I think I got that correct, but that's the gist of it. Um, and when I said I think I got that correct, that means I think I got the negative and positive correct. I can't remember if positive is moving forward or negative is moving forward. I probably should look that up first, but life is too short. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing for our left and right controls. So we're just going to delete that. And now this is going to be vector3.move right, current speed, and instead of looking at our joystick controls, we are going to call the event data, once again, dot move vector dot x. Okay, so now we get to process our x axis on the joystick and also our y axis on the joystick. Yeah, okay. So once we do that, let's go ahead and move this aside and play our game. So once it's played, I'll go ahead and do A, D, S, and W. And yeah, nothing is still moving. So why not? Well, in order for an event system to take the inputs, it has to be the object that you want to control has to be in focus. If the object is not in focus, it's not going to take the inputs. So what we have to do is, within our event system, we got to first tell it which object should be first selected, or what object can we control with this event system. So in this case, we want to control our car in our event system. So we got to make sure that within our event system, our first selected is our car. Let's go ahead and hit play. And now we do W, D, S, A. The car is moving, as you could see here on the screen, but it is moving extremely slow. And the reason for that is because of these variables right here. How many inputs, actions per second we're going to be determining or receiving from our inputs, and also what is our repeat delay. So we don't want any delay in our inputs, so I'm going to leave this, or I'm going to change it to 0. And for input per second, you can play around with the numbers to see what feels right in your game. For now, I'm just going to do 100. I'll go ahead and select our game again. And yeah, now the car is sort of moving nice and smoothly. So if we do NOS on, yeah. As soon as you do NOS on, all of a sudden our car is no longer in focus. So yeah, I can't move my car anymore. Great. Okay. So we hit stop and our numbers sort of jump back to 10 and 0.5 is because anytime you change any variables in play mode, it assumes that you're just sort of testing and playing around with the variables to sort of get a feel for it. Sometimes you like to not save those changes, but in our case, we actually did want to save it, so I'm just going to retype it, 10 or 100 and 0. So how do we get our button NOS to, after we press it, to get the car back into focus? Well, what I'm going to do is I am going to reference back to our Tag Arcade input module. So I am going to say public Tag Arcade input module. I'm just going to call it input module because I don't feel like typing Tag Arcade input module. And within our input module, we could say input module dot select game object and our car. And we now need a game object to reference our car. So we're going to do that too. Public game object car. Save. So what this means is we're going to our, not to our car control, but to our canvas. I forgot where I put the actual script for our car movement. Yeah, that's why. We got an error at the bottom right hand corner. Because we need to say which game object has to be selected. So in this case, it's going to be our car. Let's go ahead and save it. That goes away. Within our car script, we now have our updated script. So let's go ahead and for my input module, it's going to be my event system. For my car, it's going to be my car. And let's close our console and hit play. So now we go left, right, up, down, and I'm pretty much looking at this because it's a better view than where my camera is. And now when I changed my NOS, it goes really fast and I could still control my car. Okay, so that's good. Now the last thing I want to talk about is how to get our NOS button working. So now if you press N, we can't toggle on and off the NOS function. So that's not good. So let's go ahead and add in that script. So what we will do is first set up our INOS event handler. So like I said, within our code, we have the iMove handler, the iSubmit handler, and iCancel handler. But I want to create my own INOS handler. So how do I do that? Well, I am going to create a script, a C# script called INOS Handler. And let's go ahead and go into there. Yep, we're going to reload all. And within our INOS handler, it has to be using our event system. So using Unity Engine dot event systems. So we can actually delete everything here. And this is actually going to extend one of Unity's functions, which is the iEvent system handler. And what we're going to do is we could give this we can give this name anything we want to call it. So for me, I'm just going to say on NOS, but it could be anything on car NOS, on, I don't know, whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it simple on NOS, and it has to accept the base event data. So base event data, and I'm just going to call it event data because Unity calls it event data. So hit save, and why? Yeah, that's why. Because this is not going to be a public class. This is going to be a public interface. So that's why that I'm getting an error message here that has to be abstract, extern, or partial. So this has to be a public interface. And that should go away. Okay. So the star is still here, which means my save button isn't quite working out. So I'm just going to do File, Save All. That star went away, so I know it's saved. Okay, so now that we have the INOS handler, we could go into our car controls. Let me go back into my scripts. Go to our car moves, and now we could add our interface. INOS Handler. Okay, but if you look in here, it says car moves has no idea how to handle this INOS event. So in order for our script to know about this INOS handler, we have to tell our input module how to handle it. So we're going to create a new input module. So I'm just going to copy the name just because I don't feel like retyping that many letters. And I'm going to do a new C# script. I'm going to do paste, but I will call this car input module. Okay, so it's a brand new C# script called car input module. And we're going to hit reload. And within our car input module, it will extend our tag arcade input module. So we're going to say car input module has to extend our tag arcade input module. And within it, I want to override one of my functions that I created specifically so that I could add in more custom controls. So we're going to override protected void extra event buttons, and this could be my controls, car controls, base event, why is, no, base event, data, base event, data. And I am getting a lot of red. So the reason why I'm getting a lot of reds because I've actually have to use my namespace directive. Let's go ahead and hit tab to sort of indent everything. And I have to use namespace Unity engine dot event systems. And that should get rid of all the red. Yay, no more red. And I just don't like how Visual Studios does the brackets. I always like the brackets at the end of my functions, or after the name of my functions. Okay. So we're going to say if car controls dot is button down on controls dot button action dot NOS. When that happens, I want to say execute events dot execute my INOS handler base dot event system dot current selected game object comma base event data comma car execute events dot NOS handler semicolon. Okay. So let's go ahead and fix my brackets as well. So what this means is that when I detect that my NOS button is pressed down, then I could invoke the INOS handler for any game objects that's actually listening for an INOS handler. In this case, this would be my car move command, looking for the INOS handler. Now the key thing is we haven't actually defined the car execute events yet. So a car execute event is going to be my new event system that specifically looks at that event handler. So let's go ahead and say create new C# script, and we're just going to call this car x. You know what? I'm just going to keep it simple. Car events. So I'm just going to go back to my car input module. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm just going to call this car events. There we go. Now, what is car events? Well, unfortunately, for everything that uses the event system, uh, it's being triggered by events, and Unity needs to know what those events are in order to listen for them. So, what we're going to do is say using Unity engine dot event systems, and we're going to change our definitions. So it's going to be a public static class called the car execute events, or car events. The reason for this class to be static is so that we actually don't have to create an instance of this class in order to use it. So we don't have to say something like this car event equals new car events. We can just say car events dot execute, and it'll execute that function, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah. So what that means is that within our car input, we just say car events dot NOS handler without actually creating another instance of car events. So we're gonna say public static read only execute events dot event function. It's going to be called INOS handler. NOS handler equals new execute events dot event function INOS handler execute. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use the existing Unity event system so that when my INOS handler event happens, that Unity will execute it. And yes, I do have to register this within the Unity events systems. And that's essentially what I'm doing. Okay, so now we've got to tell Unity how do we process this execute command. So we're going to say public static void execute INOS handler. It's going to be called handler, comma, base event data, event data. And this is going to say handler.onNAS event data. Okay. So yeah, you could name this whatever you want. It could be execute, or you could even say execute NAS or execute car NAS or NAS car. Whatever you put in here should be reflected over here. So these two have to match up. So I'm just going to say execute because that's how most of the scripts in Unity is referenced and used anyway. So I'm just going to follow Unity's convention. And let's see. Oh, and the handler.onNAS has to match up with this function. So you could say on this NAS, and this has to sort of match up as well. So this is really confusing, but hopefully that all makes sense. And now we go back to our car moves, INOS Handler. We should be able to run this without any problems. Hopefully. Let's see. Car move does not implement interface member. INOS. Okay. Oh. Yes. Yes, you are right. Because we are using our tag arcade input module, and our tag arcade input module does not know about our INOS event, but our car input module does. So let's go ahead and update this to be our car input module. File save. And for our event system, we'll remove the tag arcade input module and say this is my car input module. Uh, huh. Carlos event. Oh, do I have to? Okay. Okay, so I'll do my implementation for my car. Okay, so let's implement our NAS function. So public void on NAS base event data. So when my NAS button is pressed, all I'm going to do is do my NAS toggle. And that's all I'm doing. Save. And now so yeah. Go ahead and go back. No more compiling errors because I have defined how I use my input module. Let's say this is the car input module. Let's change that to 100 again. Change this to 0. Let's hit play. And if I go left, right, up, down, everything looks like it's working. And if I press N for NAS, I get a null exception. Why not? Object reference not set to an instance of an object. Huh. Input module, that's why. So for my input module, since I renamed it, I have to re-reference it to say car input module for my event system. Try that again. Left, right, up, down, NAS. Okay, there we go. So the car's moving really fast. Press N again, NOS is off. So if I look on the top right hand corner, I could toggle my NOS on and off. And that's it. So that is how you modify the Unity event system and apply it to a car or to any game object that you want to control. So I'm not sure if the performance is better than using the actual update function, but instead of instead of the script constantly checking for an update, now it's waiting for the command instead. So yeah, as for performance, they say that this way the performance is better because the update function is more expensive. But I personally, because I'm working on very small projects, I'm not going to notice it that much. So whether you use it versus the update function is definitely up to you. Definitely play with your performance, and if your project becomes really, really big, it's probably worth investigating to see whether or not this will improve your performance a lot. From what I understand, this should improve it, but personally, I can't guarantee it because, like I said, my projects aren't that big. So, like I said, if you want to copy the script, feel free to go to my website and just copy and paste the scripts into your code, and hope you enjoy it. If you like what you hear, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And until next time, have fun and keep on creating games.